Hi everybody, I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest ILC ClaimsTech Taster session. It's a series of interviews giving previews of what amazing content you expect to see on the 11th of February at ILC ClaimsTech. The event already has over 700 registered attendees. If you haven't registered yet, go to isleofclaims.com and registration is free. As you probably know, the theme of the conference is disrupting claims and disrupting conferences, and we'll be showcasing lots of emerging technology. We've got 16 claims leaders speaking, industry leaders speaking, talking about their businesses and how technology is affecting them and how they're using it in their businesses. But I guess it's really important to remember that fundamentally technology is an enabler, and it has to produce better outcomes for customers, either through a better experience or through lower prices. So I'm really delighted to have with us today Ian Hughes, the CEO of Consumer Intelligence, undoubtedly the country's leading consumer insight business in financial services. And Ian will be doing a keynote session with us at ILC ClaimsTech on changing consumer expectations and behaviours. And he's going to give us a flavour today of what we can look forward to in February. So I'm really delighted to welcome you to the session, Ian. Hi.
Thanks for having me, Stuart. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the session. There's this Chinese proverb about may you live in interesting times, and I feel like that is us right now, right?
Absolutely. And actually, the theme of the conference being disrupting claims, I guess it would be remiss of me to avoid the opportunity to talk to you about how COVID has impacted insurance and how the different companies maybe have responded to the challenge of the COVID disruption that we've seen and continue to see.
So we see it sort of uniquely through the lens of the consumer when we're looking at this kind of stuff. So I can tell you how consumers have seen this in terms of their interactions with insurance companies. So, very early on in the pandemic, what we saw was a huge spike from consumers in their anxiety, which led to lower shop around rates. It led to lower switching rates. It also led to, so one of the questions we've been asking consumers all the way through the pandemic is, do they think they're vulnerable? And we've been using the FCA's definition for that one. And we saw this massive spike, almost doubling in vulnerability in the month of March and April. It's been slowly coming down ever since then, so people are feeling less vulnerable. But in terms of the way that consumers have felt about their insurers, massively, I think they felt under-communicated in many senses. But it's not been consistent across the entire industry. Some insurers have done a phenomenal job of working with their customers, enabling them and empowering them, and they are really reaping some benefits as a result. And others have done their very best to stay as far away from their customers as they possibly can at this point in time. And I think those people are beginning to see some of the disadvantages. So
I'm not going to ask you to say who you don't think has performed well, but for the fear of upsetting people. But who's performed well, Ian? Who do you think has done well in the last 6 months in responding to the challenges of COVID disruption?
So I think we can sort of put them in. I'll name a couple of names in a minute. But let's just put it into a category to start off with. The companies that proactively reached out to their customers and made it easy for their customers to either do business with them or alternatively to get a refund from their insurance. Those are the companies, the easier they made it, the easier they made the process, the more loyal their customers have become. And I guess the highest profile one of those is Admiral. So Admiral fairly early on came out with their £25 refund. And they just basically said to everybody, you don't have to do anything. In fact, we prefer that you wouldn't do anything. We will just send you the money. And that has created, so we've tracked throughout the COVID, we tracked consumer sentiment. That's created the most extraordinary loyalty from Admiral customers, which is great. But actually, really interesting, it has created the most extraordinary levels of interest from non-Admiral customers, people who were customers of those other companies we're not going to talk about, who are sitting almost enviously looking on and going, God, my insurer's done nothing for me. And so there's this huge spectrum from those people who sent their customers stuff and proactively reached out and made it easy for customers to claim, all the way through to those who've literally done nothing. And somewhere in the middle, there's a very interesting group of people who did do things for customers, but didn't make it easy for customers. And that whole thing of the ease of the interaction has been something that has been quite interesting. So, and we track that in terms of numbers of customers who shop around at renewal, numbers of customers who switch at renewal, and also where customers go to when they switch. So companies like Admiral, to some extent LV, and some of the others who were quite overt upfront have been net beneficiaries, and others have been losers.
Fantastic. So I'm sure you'll be touching on COVID again in February, but what other themes can we expect to hear from you about in February at Disrupting Claims?
I think this has been probably the most transformative time for the claims industry. Clearly, in some cases, claims have dropped off. We've seen claims rates dropping off. But in other cases, what we've seen is a real need to reinvent what a claim is. Going online, interacting differently with customers. It's not like we didn't have weather events. We still had floods. We've still had other things going on. We've still had claims going on. People have still had accidents. People have still needed to call on the claims industry to serve them during this period of time, even though it may have been less. And I think what we're going to be looking at is a fundamental shift that's happened within consumers, and that shift is driving the claims industry. I think one of the things, so we're doing it now, right? So we're not face to face in the way that we used to be face to face. I remember probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, in terms of claims technology, the big exciting thing was taking videos with mobile phones and being able to connect remotely with the claims people. That was it. That back then, that was all the exciting new tech that might be coming soon. Now it's if you don't have it, you're not even in the game, right? So that has fundamentally shifted just in 9 months. Yeah. So that's the sort of simple thing that gets us started, gets us going. It's the question of what that means after that, what that means in terms of that moving forward into the future, that acceleration into this sort of digital customer experience of the future. But again, through the lens of the customer, what you see very clearly is a shift in the way that customers are expecting companies to deal with them, a shift in the expectations, an expectation that you will be able to deliver digitally rather than a hope that you'll be able to do it. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about in February, making the linkages out to other industries. And we'll also be looking, obviously, there wasn't just one bow wave that hit the industry, there was a second bow wave that hit the industry, almost like a sort of a perfect storm of the FCA stepping up and stepping in along the way as well.
I was going to mention that, again, along the themes of claims and disruption and technology, because technology will, if used properly, make us all work more effectively and efficiently and produce better outcomes. Which ultimately the FCA, it feels like that's what they're driving us towards. But what specific challenges do you see from the latest indications of what they'll be investigating in 2021 for us?
Challenge is an interesting word there, Stuart. So, I got to be honest, right? I'm the eternal optimist. So you don't just get me to come and talk to you about being a consumer. I'm here to be optimistic as well. I think that this is the most incredible opportunity. It's going to be a challenge if you don't rise to it. So one of the key things that's going to be 2021 is if you can't change, you're in trouble. You're not just in trouble from COVID, but you're in trouble from the FCA as well. So change is the big theme for 2021. It will be the year of change. So for me, what's very interesting looking at the FCA's work, and we'll know by the 11th of February, hopefully we'll know what the final outcomes are going to be. At this point, we've got a sense of direction. For the claims industry, the piece around renewal premiums and new business premiums is less interesting. I mean, that is a massive tectonic plate shift for the insurance industry in general. But I think there's a really interesting piece that comes out of the FCA's work, and it links to fair value. So there's this entire piece around fair value. It wasn't even mentioned when the FCA first got started on all of this. It was mentioned 132 times in the document that came out in September. And everybody's sitting there going, oh, what's fair value? I don't know what that is. But one of the clear things that we're getting out of our work that we've done across the course of lockdown is we've been looking at things like vulnerability. What vulnerability is in the FCA's definition is people who don't shop around and people who are very sticky with their current insurer, and the possibility that they could well be ripped off by their insurer as a result of that. And claims is one of the things that creates stickiness, right? So if you do a good claim, then the customer tends to stay loyal. We know this to be true. You know this to be true as an industry. It's because you do great work, but it also could theoretically create vulnerability as well. So I think there's some really interesting stuff that's going to come as a result of that. The FCA are very hot on that. For me, and I'm still working through this, so happy to have rocks thrown at this as in either pre the day or on the day. If it is the case that I have bought a certain insurance product, I have had a claim, and I continue to buy that product, my view would be that I would continue to expect that same level of claim service, if not higher, if I had a second claim. Yeah. So claims goes from being something that is sort of like an also-ran within the claims, within the insurance industry, to being a fundamental part of fair value. Yeah. And so the way that companies think about claims is part of that fair value piece that the FCA talked about so many times in its last report. And I think we're going to see some big changes around that. I think if you rip out claims service, if you dumb down the claims service, if you make it worse, then to my view, it's not the same policy as the one you might have bought last year. And that's a huge difference. And I think it would make massive change in the industry. Yeah,
definitely. I think what someone once said to me, or I think we once discussed, claims about 2 questions asked in the wrong order. Are you covered? And what we're going to do to get you out of trouble. And what I'm really looking forward to in February is hearing how companies are going to make it just about the second question. What are we going to do to get you out of trouble? Because the technology should be able to do all of the other stuff discreetly. The are you covered question should never have to be asked, really. So, and I think that plays to your FCA point, definitely. Now, Ian, just final point is that I know you guys, it's not just about all the clever stuff that you talk about and that you write about. You have some quite smart technology yourself that you use in order to track trends. I think you've got your insurance tracker. Do you just mention how that works?
Yeah, so we've got 2 trackers that we've got running at the moment. They're consumer trackers. The insurance behavior tracker has been running for about a decade. It is the most comprehensive survey of people who are buying car insurance within the market. We've tracked it across the course of now, these last 10 years. We've seen the changes across the last 10 years. We've seen the changes in terms of claims. I've previously talked at iLove Claims events about the varying degrees in which insurers get great ratings from customers, and so those trackers really help us with that. They also help us to understand the linkage between those claims and renewal and propensity to renew and loyalty to brand. So that's been really interesting. The other thing that we've been tracking during COVID, so we've supplemented that during COVID, because that tracker runs, it's 2,000 people every single month who buy car insurance. But to top that up, we've also added in an extra 1,000 people a week who buy car insurance to try and find out what trends have been during COVID, because it's been changing so quickly. Yeah. So we think that at this point in time, those trackers give us the most comprehensive view of what's going on within the motor insurance industry and within the claims within the motor insurance industry. Wow. And the one thing I can tell you, Stuart, is what that data tells us is that everything that you assumed that 2021 was going to be like as you came into 2020, and even after you were halfway through 2020, everything you assumed, as far as customers are concerned, is out the window and is different. What customers want, where customers are going, what their behavior and how we track their behavior is evolving rapidly. So I'm really excited. Between now and February, we'll get to some we're going to have some extraordinary outcomes for you.
Well, Ian, you're always one of the highlights of any of our events that you've attended. You've always got amazing feedback from our audiences. I'm hugely excited about hearing more in February. You've really whetted, I'm sure, lots of appetites about and prompted people to make sure that they join our session on customer disruption. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and really look forward to catching up on the 11th of February when we'll get into much more detail. Thanks very much, Ian.
See you there.